understand that you have, you've been writing, and you're known to most everyone in SUBUD for the books that you have written, which are extremely inspired. Could you tell us first your other encounters about with Bapak, and specifically what happened for you with the Latian, and also how did those books came?
Yes. Well, in 1957, this first summer again, at one point, Bapak turned to me. There was a small sitting room upstairs where a few people joined every night. Maybe I'll say before that the days or evenings at Coombe were very heavily charged. Latihan began at about 7:30 and went on for up to 4 or 5 hours, and we were, Sophie and I were presumably in the role of sort of being trained for helpers, and so we were in at every Latihan from the beginning to the end. And then by about midnight, when the Latihans, all the different ones, and all the openings at the beginning were all finished, Bapak would go up to his sitting room with Ibu, and just a few of us went up there and spent another hour or 2 or 3 with Bapak. Then one moment he'd turn and say, "Ibu is tired, we better stop for tonight." That was about 3 o'clock in the morning.
So you were able to ask a lot of personal questions and listen about a lot of...
Yes, and there was the first testing took place, the first testing we knew of in Europe. Testing not of questions and problems and that sort of thing, but the testing that Bapak practiced. And the person who received most was Miriam Kibble. She was the most sensitive and received. At the beginning, this was, to strangers, this was a rather mystifying experience.
Of course.
Bapak would say, what is the nature of this, or what will be the earth in 10,000 years? I don't remember the kind of questions, but the idea that one could receive this internally, some answer, seemed a long way away. And to some extent my training in the Gurdjieff system tended to be an obstacle in that, because I was trying to put aside imagination, and in the end I put everything aside, so that I found it very difficult to receive. And then suddenly something would happen, and it would be so vivid, you knew that you would receive something, whatever its significance was.
Is there some specific... Yes, extraordinary. Do you remember some specific issues, and particularly the one concerning this inspiration that came to you about writing?
Well, coming back to the writing, one of these sessions, Bapak pointed to me and said, "One day you will write about Susila Bodhidharma. There is much still to be said. And you don't have to think or study or anything. You just take a pencil, you take paper, you write." And so nothing happened, needless to say. And actually nothing happened for 2 years. And then once we were in Ireland at the time of the Congress, the Coombe Spring Congress, the First World Congress, and we'd gone over to Ireland after the Congress, and Bapak was due to come and stay with us in October. And we were in a house there, and I thought that writing might begin. I didn't know what it meant. Nothing had happened until then at all. But it was a big old house. It called itself a castle, Rathaldron Castle. Had an old pale tower with a sitting room that we used with Bapak. On one floor, and floor above, was our bedroom in the pale tower. But there was a rather pretentious Victorian addition to the castle, which was a drawing room that we never used. So I put that aside, and on a desk there I had some paper and a pencil in case anything happened. And then one day I was in there, and I'd been in a state of bloody hand, and suddenly I was almost pushed towards the table and the pencil and the paper. And I sat down, and I had no idea what I was going to write. I just started writing. And that was the beginning of Songs of Submission, the first chapter. And then that continued, and I had very strong experiences of this writing. It was always in a state of latihan. I never knew before what I would be writing. And at the same time, it was not, as it were, written from elsewhere. It was completely me, and the examples, the things that came from me, I queried that for myself. Sometimes I always tried to test when it had ended. Is it through now? Yes, it was. All right. But I then found that sometimes during the night I was awoken and I had to write again. So we fixed up in our bedroom a little shaded light at a table with a pen. So many times in the night I would carry on with the writing. And then before Babak arrived, I'd written what seemed a great deal. The first part, I think it was 15 or 18 chapters. And so when Babak came, and with Safraddin, my sister, various people, very small party, we were told not to invite anyone there. It was just a time of rest for Babak after a tour of England, and up to Scotland. And before going off to Europe and a world tour, it was a time of rest for him. Well, as a matter of fact, we had a small group already in Dublin, and naturally Babak said, well, let them come out here, and so on. So it wasn't a complete holiday. But anyhow, I took the opportunity of saying that I'd had this writing, and it seemed so remote from how I was in the ordinary way, and the writing so different from how I ordinarily would have written. In fact, just before SUBUD, I'd wanted to start writing because I'd had a lot of experience in the Gurdjieff work and experiences of my own, and I'd thought of writing. And I remember a few paragraphs, and they were stilted, and they wouldn't go at all. It was hopeless. I tore them up. And so the contrast of this other that just flowed from me was extraordinary. And I asked Babak then whether this should be published or not. Was it for me or was it for anyone else? Babak said, for other people. Should it be published? Yes, it should. Should it be anonymous or under my own name? And Babak said, under your own name, it should be published as soon as possible, and SUBUD should be in the title. And so I put, it was Songs of Submission, and I put the subtitle on the practice of SUBUD. That's how it came under my own name.